What's going on, Ambitious Vets? Welcome to episode number 13 of the Ambitious Vet Show with U.S. Marine veteran turned national renowned blogger and life coach, Ben Killoy. Welcome to the Ambitious Vet. My name is Chris Hoffman, former Marine combat veteran turned passion-driven entrepreneur. Now, guys, we are here to dive into the trenches with today's top-performing military veterans that were once warrior-made but are now passion-driven. Guys, our intentions is simple here. We're here to unlock those blind spots and bring in the golden grenades that blow your guys' mind to have you guys live a more impactful, fulfilling, and top-performing civilian life. All right, so Ambitious Vets, are you someone that's getting out of the uniform or have been out for a couple years and you have a huge vision, but you're getting hit with adversity? One, I identify with you, but two, I personally invite you to come get closer to us here at the Ambitious Vet by going and joining Veteran Empowerment Transition Group on Facebook. So guys, here's the thing, is one thing that I've been working with as we get closer to this big ebook launch on Amazon, our 10 Steps to Predict Success Out of the Uniform ebook, and I've been creating partnerships with a lot of nonprofits out there. One is Savvy, and one of the blogs I read from this huge nonprofit nationwide is that a lot of nonprofits and a lot of programs that are helping ambitious vets transition. One is they're giving them a fire hose of resources, and what ambitious vets are lacking with getting fire hosed by tons of resources is one, lack of perspective. Two is a self-awareness on how to properly utilize those resources. So what do? Is we go into isolation mode, and then that's when we go down that dark tunnel. So guys, as the Ambitious Vets, we've created this group with one end goal in mind, and that is how do we work together to create a more impactful, influential, and a reputation that is actually known for something out of the uniform, guys. See, a long time ago when I first started thinking about creating this movement, I saw that veterans were getting out feeling like Superman, but found out very quickly that they bled, that they were Clark Kent out of the uniform. Guys, we are all about how do we get back to that Superman status, and we're out there living that badass civilian life where we are attracting opportunity, but we're also being able to build a reputation that is known for something. So guys, with that being said, go and visit Veteran Empowerment Transition Group on Facebook. We have over 500 plus influencers, up and coming influencers, and guys and gals are just getting out of the uniform, like some of you guys listening to this, that are just looking to see what it takes to live an impactful life out of the uniform. So guys, go and visit Veteran Empowerment Transition Group on Facebook, and I will see you guys there. All right, so let's go ahead and introduce the guest today. So now, guys, this was recorded live inside the Veteran Empowerment Transition Tribe back on January 6th, and we're going to be releasing this probably around June 23rd, 24th of 2018. So, guys, let's just go ahead and chat about Ben Killoy. Okay, now Ben, he's a big deal in my world. Okay, one, he's a U.S. Marine turned national renowned blogger, which he's grounded in transparency and vulnerability. I definitely encourage you guys to go and visit his blogs. His heart's wide open, and he's really just a life coach as well that is really on a mission to just create heart-centered leaders, veteran leaders out there inside the marketplace. So he's built a pretty big audience around that, guys. Now, also, he's the upcoming author of his ebook called 5 Habits to Live the Life That You Love, which we're all excited about that inside of our tribe. And then, guys, he has been one of the few that has stepped up inside our tribe, Veteran Empowerment Transition, and has really owned our mission to have you guys create a more impactful life. And in his own words, find your war cry outside the uniform that has you stand for something or die for something out of the uniform. This guy is a big deal. His heart's wide open. We dive deep into what it takes to be a heart-centered and passion-driven, ambitious vet out of the uniform, guys. I'm excited to go ahead and release this. Now, guys, let's go ahead and dive in to the trenches with Ben Killoy. Ben, are you there, my friend?
I am here.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the Ambitious Vet Show, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So go ahead and fill those gaps in the introduction, man, and just tell us a little bit more about you, man.
One thing that wasn't mentioned was my age. So I'm only 33, so I'm still very early on in this transition game of life and where other people are at. And I've been out of the service now for 10 years. Last year was my 10th year. I got out in 2007. And I did the basic 4 years. I did most of my tour in Okinawa, Japan, which was where I called home for 3 years. And I was actually homesick, but I actually first came home, which was usually the opposite of what most people have. But when you call the same room essentially for 3 years, you're home. That was what I had. What I loved about that experience over there, and in many ways, living in Okinawa primed me up for what later in life would teach me what I needed to know. That I was completely outside my comfort zone. I'm a farm kid that grew up on a farm. We never left the United States. We went on road trips. Our vacations were looking at corn. And I remember one vacation we actually went to go watch the Amish farm. So living in an Okinawa in a foreign land, that was about as outside my comfort zone as the Marine Corps could have put me in. And that taught me, and what that taught me about living over there was to different experiences. That experiences are really what, in many ways, we lack a lot in our lives. We focus on what the general American way is of capitalism, buying things, collecting things. But experiences and just seeing other perspectives was so empowering for my life. I made 4 trips to Korea, 1 to the Philippines. I did a vacation in Australia. And that taught me so much about the outside world that you don't get. And many veterans already have some of that. Some of them never left the United States. Some of them were already deployed in Iraq. And they've got a lot of that experience and visibility on what the other side of the world can look like. But for me, it was actually created me to be more humble for what was coming in my life. And then when I first got out, there was one thing as Chris was doing my introduction there. I pretty much followed the program to a T almost that TAPS gives you. I bought a suit. I applied to a whole bunch of jobs. I got my first interview 2 weeks out. I went to the Men's Warehouse and I said, I need a suit for interview. And I paid $400, not thinking anything of it, because TAPS said you need a suit for interview. So I got a suit for interview and I got that job. And that part of knowing who you are when you left is so important. So many times we feel like the message as a veteran leaves is that we need to adapt to the civilian world. That's the exact opposite of what I've learned later. It's you need to learn how to integrate, but you do not need to learn how to adapt. They think differently, but your value that you brought from the military has value. And it took me a long time and a lot of years working in corporate culture, doing the grind, going 8 to 5s, being that guy that they barely trusted around the copier, that at the same time you came from a place where you were leading Marines, to realize that there was this person inside of me that loved leadership. And when I reflected back, it was when I was a platoon sergeant. I had the opportunity as a corporal to be the platoon sergeant. They were kind of rotating in 3 months stints. And I realized that in that moment, like looking at a Marine, someone maybe they had rode off, and making them a Marine, figuring out what their strengths were, pulling them up, convincing themselves that there was a person inside of them that they hadn't met before. That was so refreshing back then. And I had forgotten about that. And it wasn't until I had gotten out, changed jobs twice, gone to school for electrical engineering, because that's what you're told to do is you should get a college degree. Learned that love of electricity wasn't something that translated to something that you're good at. And I actually failed as an electrical engineer. I ended up, I got a 2-year degree, but basically just an arts and sciences degree. But nevertheless, I accomplished that. So I have that under my belt. And there was a lot of long nights staying up. I got married during that time frame. I had my first child in that time frame. I missed a lot of that time in that first time frame, or when my daughter was the first year. But I had to fall on my face. And essentially, I dropped out, I believe, in December of 2014. And I was lost for 6 months. That college was, my grass was going to get greener on the other side. And every veteran has that. They feel like, oh, they think of something, they're told to do something, that's their motivation, they run at it, and that's the grass is greener on the other side idea. and mine fell apart. This was what I was going to do. I was going to graduate and get a degree, and that's what the world said was going to be able to solve my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Then it didn't. So then what do? I've wandered for 6 months, not knowing where to go, what to do within that mode. And it wasn't until I went to a silly seminar that was just labeled making the transition from staff to supervisor. It was one of those that most people would have written off. Mm. But the guy had a golden voice. I hung on to every word. And as he was talking and teaching this stuff, I was the guy raising my hand all the time, answering all the questions because I knew them. They were just simple answers that I learned in the Marine Corps. I just completely let them go dormant and didn't realize that I had this whole fire inside of me to run towards leadership that just would wake up in the morning and I would just want to be the best leader I could be. And since then, I have just been on a strong path of, didn't really realize it at the beginning. I didn't learn it actually till this past year, but when you're trying to figure out your passion, people get really hung up on it. They people can ask the question. Most people don't even have, and have never had that question even asked to them. What are you passionate about?
Yeah.
And then when they do, then they start wondering about it, and they get stuck on it. And next thing you know, they've wasted 2 months thinking about it. And then they stress because they don't have a passion. What do I do? I feel worthless. I don't have a passion. I'm just wandering in the desert, and I got nowhere to go. But I heard something this year that completely blew my mind when I thought about this passion, and it's exactly what I was doing. I was following what made me curious. And if you do that, you don't have to worry about the passion. Your passion will find you as long as you follow what makes you curious. So the entire last 3 years, I have just been following my curiosity in leadership, reading blogs, understanding productivity, how to strengthen teams, what does a winning team look like. I excessively read books. I'm a huge fan of Audible. Zig Ziglar was one of the very first motivational persons I found, and I have been a long student of Automobile University, as he used to call it. Every day going to work, listening to books. I listened to Think and Grow Rich, which was like a 11-hour audio book on the way to work. All of those books, that was me following my curiosity. And all of that had to happen. I had to struggle through those 3 years of learning, all the way to where in March of last year, I said that it was actually interesting. So I realized I wanted to coach, and coaching was one of the areas that all my skills would come together. Because in general, I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife for business, I explained. And I was reading a Tom Clancy novel of all things. And there was this I think he was active duty, standing in Arlington Cemetery looking down, and he was putting flowers on the grave for someone. And out of all the moments that would have happened, and I had been thinking about this for 3 years of what was I going to do with all my skills. And it took this book, one silly moment, and I was like, holy crap, I could serve veterans. I'm already a veteran. Veterans already have these kind of problems. There are many veterans looking for leadership on this kind of issue. But damn, did it take 3 years of my life, that one book, and I didn't even like the book. I ended up giving up on it. But that one book, that one moment, I had to be in that moment, laying in bed, reading that book, in order for my entire life to change last year. I started blogging for veterans. I operated my website. Again, following my curiosity, and all of that is essentially even led to finding Chris and to this one day. But it all started by singing a book, reading a silly Tom Clancy novel. That was a fiction book, just to balance out, because I learned you can't just read nonfiction. You got to balance out with the fiction. But
you know,
it
took me a while to actually discover that. Like, a lot of people say that nonfiction or actually fiction books will actually release more creativity. Which is something that I plan on doing too, man. But you said you dropped a lot of golden grenades there, man. So like, there's a few things I want to point out to what you said to kind of hit the hammer home. All right. So I love finding your purpose by chasing your curiosity, following your curiosity. That's good stuff. How many of veterans are going to be watching this show? Ambitious vets, either in the beginning of a startup or, guys that are still in the uniform, still scared to get out of the uniform, are like curious, but they're not willing to follow it. I was actually talking to someone this morning that's a high performer, and we're working on creating some projects together, as I was telling Ben before this interview. And he talked about how we chase opportunity. And when you chase opportunity, there's only more things that can increase in your life. The key is what are you curious about? What are your strengths, and what are you most passionate about? And that's when you got to do the inner work. You got to go to seminars. You got to invest into yourself. And you got to ask yourself the hard questions. Now, brother, I wanted to actually also point out you and your courage of actually going into a seminar and actually raising your hand. Think about it. Military, we kind of turned off the fear button, right? We turn off the fear button. So think about how most civilians would go into a seminar and probably sit in the back and be really timid and not be as much action taker that you were. When you went to that seminar, you were ready to hear the words that were said in that seminar, which had you be proactive, take massive action. And then that was your turning point to actually becoming who you are today, which is a renowned blogger. Your blog is amazing. And it really, anytime I read any blog of yours, it has me get more connected to my heart versus my mind. This is where passion comes from. This is where strategy comes from, right? Most people don't know how to align that. So you're doing amazing work, brother. We're completely honored to have you on the show. I'm excited to see what you're going to create in 2018. Now, brother, kind of shifting gears, you kind of talked about your transition story. Now let's talk about the biggest struggle for you. What was the biggest failure, struggle, and you chasing what you wanted out of the uniform?
I would say I've had and I didn't fully realize all of this, but I've kind of been able to, 2020, looking backwards, not living up to my own expectations. So unlike most people, if you ask me why I got out, it was I wasn't going to reach my full potential in the Marine Corps. I wasn't a good shooter. I wasn't a good runner. And those two things definitely require you to get promoted. I was a Lance Corporal for a lot longer than I needed to be. And I knew that those types of things were going to hold me back. And I had a lot of influence in the Marine Corps where I was at. And I knew I could still do great things. But yet my soul, I would say, was yearning and telling me that there was something bigger out there for me. But then once I got out, and then you start failing, and then you start wondering, do you even deserve it? So then a lot of what I had to go through and walk through the transition was, am I worth it? I actually wrote a blog post last summer about this, just titled, Am I Worth It? Because in many ways, like the asshole inside my head, the worst person that you can listen to is the one that's trying to talk you out of all this stuff. And just reminding you that your voice inside your head is the worst critic you have. And getting control of that was a hard thing for me to do in 2017. And it's always been there. But what I really didn't realize, and what writing, again, following all my curiosity, has led me to realize, is I have a very active brain. I'm always thinking it's a curse and a blessing. But there's a lot of opinions. So when I have a problem, I can give someone awesome advice, and they're like, why can't you do that advice for yourself? And I'm like, well, there's 15 versions of that advice rolling around in my head. I don't know which one to listen to. But writing allowed one version of that voice to come out through my hands into the keyboard. And so sometimes by writing a blog, rereading it, I was like, this was exactly what I needed to hear for myself, because that was one version of the truth. And usually it'd be the best version. But I had to say it and read it back. And I was like, this blog just changed my life. Actually, the Am I Worth It blog, I wrote the most profound thing I ever wrote to myself. I was bullied in high school. I was never the guy that was picked. I had always tried to be popular. I always wanted to be liked. I was obsessed with being liked, over obsessive. And it has even cost me, for the last 10 years, caused me problems. And I realized something as I was writing this blog, that early in life, people pushed me down so that later I was ready to pull people up. And I was like, holy crap. That was like, I wrote, and it would just randomly come out. And I'm just like, oh my God, that gives purpose to my life versus struggle. And every bad thing that ever thought of holding me back, every bully that in my head that was on repeat, saying that you're not good enough, or just pushing you down, or not picking you to play baseball, all of that went away, because it gave it power and strength, and said, all that happened for a reason, so that you were ready to accept your purpose of being a strong leader. Because leaders are ones that reach down and pull people up and find something in them that they can't find. And that's essentially what I loved about leadership. It's just bringing people together to solve a common problem. But if you can't do this and pull people up and recognize when they need to be pulled up, when they've got that look on their face, I can pick up a look on someone's face when they've got a problem a mile away. And usually I'm the guy that can tell when the room is a little bit odd, got an odd feeling, before anybody else, because I can just feel emotions really well. And it was all of that took me to come through. But man, that all had to happen for me to say that to myself. And I had to write that. And it was that version that came out that said, you are worth it, because all of this happened for a reason. It wasn't something to hold you back. It was something to make sure you were ready for when your time came to do what you needed to have happen.
Absolutely, brother. I really like, experience brings wisdom, right? And we just got some engagement. We got a few people watching the show as we do all, every week. And Bernard Bergen, he actually just put golden grenade. Early in life, people pushed me down. So later in life, I was able to pull people up. And he actually quoted you on that, my man. So you're dropping some golden grenades. You're bringing a tremendous amount of value here. Guys, if you guys have any questions, anybody that's watching this, you have any questions for Ben, go ahead and drop them in. If we can get to them, we'll get to them. But I'm going to continue to dive in here and kind of figure out and uncover his secrets for veterans that are in his position, looking to become bloggers, or even want to get connected with him to kind of forward each other's passions. We all know that synergy creates increase, right? So synergy creates increase. So if anybody wants to get connected with him, definitely get connected. But if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment below and we'll see if we can get to those. So now diving right back in, Ben, so tell me this, man. Okay, so a lot of veterans complain about getting traction, right? And just creating some rhythm out of the uniform and actually just creating that accountability, right? When we were in the Marine Corps, we were told what to do from 05 all the way to 1900 sometimes, in my case, till midnight sometimes. So I wasn't the best Marine every now and again. So here's the thing, brothers. How did you find that traction? Because as you said, you hit your breaking point about 6 months out, right? That's what you said. You said you hit your breaking point around 6 months out.
No, so, it was like when it was like maybe 6 years after I got out, I hit my breaking point where it all like I dropped out of college about 6 years later.
Right.
It's almost 6 years out where before I had that 6 month of where I was just like, what do I do now? So I was operating on someone else's plan, essentially what the civilians say that you should do to survive in the civilian world, and it took 6 years for it to all come tumbling down. But I learned a lot through that. So I wouldn't regret doing it. Because everything that comes in my life today is still because of that. I wouldn't have met my wife if I had done something different and not got that job. So everything happens for a reason. It's just knowing that there's strength from it, not necessarily like you lost something by waiting 6 years to figure this out. It's figuring out what you gained from that 6 years to make sure that you recognize what you can use as you go forward.
Right.
Failure is only a bad idea when you don't learn from it.
Yep. Good. Great wisdom there, man. So, I mean, how did you find traction? How did you find that traction out of the uniform?
For me, it was really just Zig Ziglar. I would say I would put all of it on him. He was recommended by the guy in that seminar I went to, and so he was the first guy I looked up. He was dead already by the time I found him. But I had started reading, and this is maybe a good story to tell here. So there was a book that was mentioned. And then I learned about as I started looking up Zig Ziglar, called Better Than Good. And this book was the first Zig Ziglar book. And I think if I were to quote, it'd be the first like self-help nonfiction book that I read. And in it, he talked and told stories about all the different things that you hear about motivation and how to use it, how to frame your mind. He taught me a couple principles that really got me the traction. The first one was you are who you are and where you are because of what has gone into your mind. You can change who you are and you can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. That hit me so hard that's been my mission for the last 10 years, to change what's gone into my mind, which is what I went through the mode of digesting everything that I could on it, because that would essentially shape my mindset to be the person that was different than the person that would sit and watch Netflix or play PlayStation or do anything that's not necessarily going to move me forward in life. And the other one with the better than good, he adapted that as an answer. So if you were to ask Zig Ziglar how he's doing, he always says better than good. And for the last 10 years, I've known it for the last 10 years, I would say. So at the last 3 years, that's been my answer. And I've never met someone that said it back to me, but I can imagine the day the universe puts someone in front of me that says it first is going to be a pretty magical day, because there have been a lot of positive things that happen in my life to get to that point. But what I enjoy most about Better Than Good attitude is it says what I found so much in authenticity with people that said good. Everybody says it in the grocery line. Nobody means it. People say it because it's what you want to hear and what should be hearing, but nobody means it. Everybody's miserable. Everybody says good, and they're just saying it to mean it. But man, when I say better than good, I always love the look. And my wife still finds it funny because I say it at the restaurants and she always is amused because the person just gives this weird look that, who's this guy? But I find more often that the person needs to hear it, that I said it to, more than I needed to say it. I've had grocery store people like pause for a moment and they're like, you know what, I'm better than good too. My favorite place is the airport. The most miserable people in the world are working at TSA, and they always are the ones that are like, you know what, I'm better than good too. I had an immigration officer that he probably was mind blown for 20 minutes after, because he was truly depressed, stamping passports that day. And I said this to him, and he was just really taken back, and he's like, I'm probably not that good. And you could tell that he was going to be thinking about it for a while.
Good.
But
Good.
That better than good has really been, even where I work, people are usually classify me as the most motivated person they run into.
Good. Good. So you're shifting people's patterns on a daily basis. That's what you got to do. You know,
without even knowing what the impact is. I just keep
exactly. And anytime anybody asks me at the airport or anything, like, how am I doing? I always tell them really how I'm doing. If I'm feeling like, hey, I'm disempowered, or like, this is what happened, they're giving you an open space to actually share authentically. If they can't handle the authenticity, then they can't handle it. However, we are, and you are, I know for a fact, are about creating heart-driven people in the world. And the foundation of heart-centered people is authenticity, opening up your heart and allowing people in. If we just say we're good when we're not, are we opening our heart, or are we closing it? Right?
Yeah, we're just being statues of repetitivity. That's what it's what it's what I really don't like about our current society and the way we interact in America, is that it's so authentic. There's just nothing that's real anymore. But man, when you find that real friend, that real person to have a conversation with, like when I found you, for example, your entire mood changes, because it's just so different and it's so refreshing, that it's just completely enjoyable. And I've actually had to challenge myself, because sometimes, I mean, I have bad days. I'm not going to sit here and lie that I don't have bad days, but I will still answer better than good. But I really didn't know why I was doing it. I really just did it because sometimes I would actually, this was a little bit funny, people would get worried about me if I didn't say I was better than good, or they were looking for me to know that the universe was going to be okay that day. Because if I said I was better than good, then they were going to have a better than good day. But I realized, I don't remember where I heard it from, but essentially I say better than good even my bad days, because that means I'm hopeful that things are still going to get better. Even if I'm not right now happy, saying better than good implies I am still hopeful that by the end of the day, it's
just putting that intentionality out there. You're declaring it.
I didn't realize I was actually doing that, but once I realized, I was like, I also felt stronger, because it meant I was really being authentic in both ways. When I am really better than good, and then also when I'm hopeful that I'm going to get there.
That's good, brother. That's good. I want to backtrack on what you said at the beginning of how you're creating traction out of the uniform. I think this is important to hit for any veteran that watches this as well, that it's important to have focused effort into what content, what blogs, what information you're consuming in, because we all know that Google is our new common sense, and it's easy to dive into content and blogs and all this, but you got to have focused effort. So I'm sure that when you were doing all this content and diving into all this information, it was tailored around one goal, one skill set, one passion that you were trying to increase in, correct?
In this case, it was primarily leadership and how to be more effective at it.
Yes. So ideally, for any ambitious vet that's out there, if you're trying to get better at that thing, create traction and absorb yourself into that content. You know, take a seminar, pick up a book, listen to audio tapes, podcasts, tailored around that number one thing you want to get good at. Do it over time, and you can't help but become more valuable to the marketplace or what you're most passionate about. So thanks for hitting that on the head, Ben.
There's one thing I'd like to add to that is make sure that you have that, what I call lighthouses. You talk about this, Chris, about knowing your core values. I like to think of the core values as lighthouses, because the ocean is really big and you're going to get lost, and you're going to sometimes really easily forget who you are. Not knowing where your lighthouses are, knowing how to get back to them, can easily lead you on a road of what I found many times in my early on where I was doing all of this, is I would consume so much knowledge that it was just overload of paralysis, that you really have so many ideas what to do with your life, where to take action, that you really have no idea which one to follow anymore. And that's really where I was stuck, preventing me from, I had to overcome that to get to my point where I started blogging. But now I'm looking backwards, what I really was missing was people like me and Chris to help create the actions. What I was doing was just consuming. Yep. And that got me wiser. But I've actually seen a couple of memes on this over New Year's. Wisdom doesn't create awesomeness, essentially. You can be the wisest person on earth, but if you're not doing anything with it, you're not going to do it. You're not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter. So follow the action. I was reading one book from the next without worrying about figuring out how to implement something into my life. So I would challenge back anybody, start on this similar path of learning, or maybe they already are. Don't do it unless you're willing to follow the actions that you're following, because you could lead to a place where you know how to solve all your problems, but you really don't know which one to begin with. And then you'll feel even more worse, because what I found, the more you learned and became aware. So I like to think of like self-help as a wrong word. It's a horrible word. I like to just call it self-awareness training. But the more self-awareness you get, the more overwhelming you can get, because you now can see things that were standing right in front. You can notice this giant elephant that's been living with you this entire time, and you don't even know it's there until you read this book and you're like, holy crap, I got 10 elephants around me. How the hell do you get them out of your house? And that anxiety can be enough to put you in depression as it is. So it is a two-edged sword. That is why coaches are so important, because they can see things. So once you get information and talking, the person is, I'm sure as I'm talking, Chris is already listening for different things to pick up on and ask me questions back. That's what a coach does. And they're going to pick up and help point you down the right direction of where you need to go. They're going to hear the things you stress on, the ones they're going to pick up on what you're not saying, usually is what we're really good at. Mm-hmm. And that's what you really need to hear. And that's what's going to help you create that action in your life, because it's what you're probably afraid to say. And that's what coaches are there for. So I would say it's a two-edged sword, and the coach is the other side of the lesson that I wish I would have brought on earlier in my life. In 2017, I was part of a mastermind of 10 amazing dads, essentially, that I was part of. And they helped call out my bullshit, my red flags. They pulled me down to earth when I was way out in left field. They would tell me that the earth is round, not flat, if I needed to be reminded of that, or vice versa. If I was starting to go crazy, they would be reminding me, you're overthinking this, Ben. So I would overthink almost everything in my life. But having that in my life has allowed me to create all the action in my life that I've brought to my, through 2017. I'm even more excited at what 2018 brings in store.
Oh yeah, man. It's the year of increase. Haven't you heard? It's increase, brother. Well, man, yeah, that's a lot of good grenades there, man. Thanks for, dropping that in here. A lot of good stuff there. I'm not going to add or take away, but, I would add this, right? As you're a listener, coaching is listening. Like you said, you listen to challenges, what their emotion, what their commitment is behind everything that they're saying, right? And I listen to hear, even when I'm on a daily basis, if I'm networking with anybody, if I'm even on a strategy call or anything, I'm listening. Is this person clear in what they're describing right now? Listen for clarity in people, and every day when they're talking, listen to what their emotions are, what their challenges are, and ultimately listen to what their commitment is, and figure out how you can get them to that commitment and fulfilling on that commitment as quickly as possible. If you can do that, you're not only going to have great relationships, but you're going to be able to increase your value as well. So, brother, I want to kind of, you've been talking a lot about, just increasing and investing in yourself, right? Can you describe the power of investing in yourself and what that's made available for your life as an ambitious vet at this stage of building your vet coaching, life coaching and business company, and expanding your blog? How has investing in yourself kind of sped that up?
I would say in March, I have a perfect story that, again, took all of this to lead up to it. But I've heard it said that if you want something in your life that you've never had, well, then that usually means that you need to do something you've never done.
Right.
And I asked myself this question, and I would have answered friends. I don't have a lot of quality friends in my life. Very few of them, probably 3 or 4 that I would consider good friends, ones that I could count on. And I've always wanted more. It's always been a gap in my life, even from high school. The willingness to be liked, and the worry, even just going back to a girl rejecting you in high school in some ways, is preventing me from making good friends. And so I asked myself this question, and I said, well, the basic part of having friends is talking to people. So I got 3 kids. We go to the park all the time. There's other dads at the park. I took this as a challenge that every time I run into someone in an environment, that I'm just going to have the courage to stand up and talk to different people and not know where the conversation is going to lead, but know that that person is just going to they're going to want this. They want the same thing that I want. It's just, in today's society, we generally are so afraid to talk about the things that we really want that we end up just ignoring each other. I've been to the park before that hundreds of times. and never talked to dad, thinking in my head, well, this guy looks interesting. But I was like, yeah, he probably doesn't want to talk. He probably wants to play with his kids. But this year taught me every one of them was someone that I'm still friends with one of them. That is just we became good friends. And I've taken the challenge to airplanes. And I've had some amazing conversations on airplanes. There was a lady, I was on my way from Chicago to Charlotte, and she had a meditation book next to her, and she was reading. I was like, this is the universe telling me that this person probably could have a conversation, because I was learning about meditation, reading about it, meditating myself. And I was like, yeah, she probably just started reading it. And I was like, she probably just wants a quiet flight reading it. I said, damn it, I am going to talk to this lady. And we talked from the moment the plane took off to the moment the wheels touched down. It was a 3.5-hour flight. I didn't even know we were on approach. The conversations were that good. That would have never happened if I wasn't investing myself to understand something that Zig Ziglar taught. And I really, I heard it, but I never really heard it. And he says, if you can have everything you want in life, if you just help enough other people get what they want. And you can't give them what they want unless you start talking. And I'm a follower of Dave Ramsey, and he has a thing that you have to give like no one else in order to receive like no one else. And in this case, I've given value, knowing that these relationships, the value I could bring, and even just being a friend or being in that moment, you don't know what they're going through that day. You don't know if they just need one person to say hello. All of this, I would say my win of 2017 was being able to network. It sounds really stupid and funny, but that's exactly what led me to be able to talk to Chris, to come on to this show. Yep. All of that was all taking baby steps to get something that I've never had and do something that I've never done. And I would say it's worked in ways that I never would have been able to predict. You could never have told me talking to a person on an airplane would have been one action step that led to a breadcrumbs of steps to get to this moment of talking to Chris. But it's exactly what had happened. But it took all of those moments, not understanding it. And the most important part, trust the process. You're not going to understand the process, but trust the process. And something I learned in 2017 was sometimes you have to fail first, the second, the third time even, to figure out the good fourth idea. I've waited so much of my life to figure out the first good idea. And I wasted 3 years waiting for that first good idea. And essentially what this year taught me was you have to fail at the first good idea. Maybe it's not a failure, but you definitely have to start at the first idea to find the second good one. Because sometimes on the other side of the first failure is the one idea that you've been waiting for your entire life. But you don't know it unless you take the first step to fail. I've heard it said the most successful people in life, like Elon Musk, they were only there because they figured out how to fail faster. The most successful people just figured out how to, boom, fail, move on to the next one, boom, fail, move on to the next one. Because what I've learned also was you never know how close you are to that next success. And the story that I love about this is the story of Plato. So if anybody has ever looked up the story of Plato, it was invented in the 1930s by a guy it was essentially a byproduct of what he was creating. And it was 2 days from going bankrupt. He was going to close the doors because nobody wanted his product. And a teacher came by and said, this stuff's amazing. And it was stuff he was throwing away. And essentially, he was 2 days away from what became his most influential product and is still around today as something that kids play with. But 2 days from failure took him to find the most successful thing that he ever had done before. And so you have to trust that process and trust that failure is something that it has to be taught to you. And that there's going to be lessons along the way that you can't get any other way than failing. And that was my message that I needed to hear to myself in 2017. And it took a long time for me to hear it. And I had to hear all those books. I had to go through it. I had to have the coaches, the mastermind. It was all there to help all of these messages come through. So hopefully this show, me being on it, I can help shortcut some of you guys for where you guys are at. But man, trusting the process and understanding that even another random story, all of this that I've led up to, just in November, I've had a passion for planes all my life. I'm a giant plane nerd. I read the plane news all the time. And I've always wanted it, but I never could figure out how to get myself connected into planes. But going through all this process has taught me that I just come into the moment, and it hit me that I was like, I could be a drone pilot. I love drones. There's just a simple test that's a pretty good actually filter for anybody else trying to start it. So I've already, in November, I've started to try to figure out how to follow my curiosity in drones. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to get my commercial drone license and start operating drones for the area. And I'm going to see where it goes. I have no idea where that's going to go.
Good.
But I've got the first step, and I'm curious about it. I love it, and it's a source of passion. I wake up and do it for free if I had to.
Come on. You just turn into a little kid, man. You just like your way of being just turned into a little kid, man. Love that.
But I had to
that's when you know you're on the right path and what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's just curiosity. Yep. But I had to learn all of this together in order. I've loved drones ever since they were invented. I never could get to convince myself $1,000 was worth it. But I had to go through this entire journey. I had to blog the entire year. I had to mastermind for the entire year. And it sounds crazy, but I had to be all of that way around just to get to the point where I could figure out how to live my life of passion with airplanes.
Yeah. Well, brother, I want to leave you, and that's all good stuff, and I love it all, man. So I want to leave you time to kind of share your message and what you're up to, in your life, man. Before we get there, I want you to kind of sum up all these golden grenades that you just landed and blew up here, man. You've been lighting it up. I told you before we went live.
Now you got me as like a little kid, so I'm even more like.
I know you're about to blow it up, and even right before we went live, man, I told you you were going to kill it, man. And you lead with your heart. That's all you got to do, and value follows. Especially when you've spent as much time as you have investing in yourself and investing in your skill set and where you're going. So, I loved having you on the show. You have a huge heart, man. And you're going to help a lot of people, and we're going to help out a lot of people, specifically vets, together. And I'm excited to see what that looks like in 18. But before we kind of dive into what you're creating, brother, if you could sum up all the golden grenades that you just kind of dove into 3 golden grenades, okay? 3 golden grenades that could impact anybody that's going to watch this show right now to create immediate impact in their passion, their life, or their business, what would they be?
I would first start with a question. I'm a big question guy. I would first start pondering a little bit, what would you wake up and do every day for free? Because in that question lies a lot of where you need to be, but maybe you're not. And you don't really know how to get there, but within that question lies my planes, essentially. I would wake up and do planes every day for free. But I had to know that question and know that answer in order to figure out what makes me curious. So work with that question and follow curiosity would be one. Second would be start adding value and start networking within that area. The moment I found this plane idea, I started joining all the drone groups on Facebook, and I started getting within the group and being part of the community and adding value. Third one is, if anybody is an entrepreneur doing any of this type of stuff in the online sphere, blogging, I would say what taught me in 2017 was the worst place you could be as a blogger is on your own blog. A blogger's mission is not to put words into the universe on his blog. A blogger's mission is to add value on other people's blogs. So I think maybe like in the summer, halfway through, I figured out the worst place I could be was on my own blog. Post a blog and leave it, and then just go everywhere else and start just adding value to every corner you can find. Find Facebook groups that have the same thing and just start solving people's problems, adding little tidbits, because I'll say something as silly, and sometimes I got 3 kids, so Miss Frizzle is someone that's part of our household quite often, and she always says, "Get messy and make mistakes." And it's a silly little thing, but I'll say that in some groups, and people will go bananas over it, even though it's just something silly. But that's essentially me branding myself, adding value. They like it, they laugh. That's what people want. They want days or nights working on my website to make it look pretty. But that's not really where you need to be. It needs to be finding other places that are just similar to the niche you're working in and just add value to your blue in the face. Because that's the secret to getting something from the universe, is you have to give something first. And it took me a long time throughout 2017 to learn that, but 2017 proved that was exactly what I needed to be doing.
Yeah, that's
how
awesome.
I found Chris. I've been adding value to Chris ever since I found him, and it's been operating that exact same principle.
Yeah, an opportunity is followed. Anytime you provide value, opportunity follows. More, bigger opportunity follows, because it's a consistency. Consistently creates credibility and trust. And plain and simple, man, you've dropped a lot of knowledge, value, wisdom, all that right inside the group now. Brother, I want to give you some time to kind of talk about, what are you up to, man? What is this movement that you're creating around creating heart-centered veterans? What does that mean to you, and what's your vision around this?
So my vision is to work with entrepreneurs that's getting started. I've actually been working with a couple of entrepreneurs that just got started. What I like to try to provide is there's lots of people operating on one side of the fence, either in their business side of the coaching or the life side of the coaching. But entrepreneurs, they've got problems in all avenues of that. They've got life problems, they've got family problems, and they're trying to do something. At the same time, they've got an entire ecosystem running, whether it be kids. I got 3 kids upstairs sleeping right now, and I'm trying to do all this. That person exists, and they need balance on all sides of it. They need advice. So what I'm trying to do is bring what I brought from my skills, learning since I've got out, from business strategy, which is one of my big fortes, and then just general business problems. Something that people go into business knowing and thinking in the business mind, but what wins in business is his heart. And really where this idea for the heart, what really resonated me the most was Southwest Airlines. So I remember taking a Southwest flight maybe like 3 years ago. You're sitting in the waiting for the gate to open, and all you hear over that loudspeaker is, "Without a heart, it's just a machine. Without a heart, it's just a machine." And you know, Southwest, if you've flown them, there's something different in the water. They have an organization that just doesn't operate on strategy, business, corporate profit. They operate on an organization that's built on heart, and they hire for heart first and train for skill. So they don't even worry whether you have the skills for the job. They worry, do you have the heart? And this is one of the most important pieces missing from business today, is that behind the business acumen of what people need to know to win, there is an entire way of working from a heart-centered point of view that allows leaders to change the game of how they run their organization. And that's what I like to say that I like to bring, is I bring that different viewpoint of how to bring the emotion back into the business. People say you got to remove the emotion to run a business. In some cases, yes, but in other cases, the emotion is where the magic happens, where you're going to build memories and connections with your customers that no competitor can do. I've heard stories, one that gets me crying every time I watch a YouTube video for Southwest. There was a mom and her daughter, and they were saying goodbye to a soldier who was going back to Iraq. And they said goodbye outside at the ticket agency, and a Southwest employee noticed this, walked over and said, "Hey, let me get you a gate ticket so you can walk back there and say goodbye." So she's humbled and said, "Yeah, I love that." They go back, they say goodbye at the gate. She's crying, they say goodbye again, and the Southwest agent comes up, "Is there anything I can do to make this better for you?" And the mom's like, "I don't know how you can make this better. My husband's leaving." I even can feel myself getting emotional when we tell the story. And the gate agent's like, "Well, the plane, we're about 5 minutes before we needed to push back. Let me see what I can do." So they go talk to the captain, and the captain approves of it. And the family comes onto the plane. They announce on the plane, "Is this person there?" And he stands up, and the kids get to go back and say hello and everything. And the plane erupts in emotion and all of that. And it's like that moment. You could do that moment with anything that you learn in business school, but that moment is what makes Southwest Southwest.
Awesome. Yeah. It's good stuff, man. So how are you doing this? How are you developing heart-driven leaders with what you're doing?
What I'm doing is essentially just adding value. I'm not even actually sure where all this is going to lead. I just continue to follow my heart and follow where it's curious, and I continue to add value, make conversations, solve problems. And just like everybody else, I'm on a journey of learning where all this takes me. And at that point, it's more about the conversation than anything else. So I'm about having conversations around hearts of people and hearts of business, and learning them how that you can live both at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, brother. So ambitious vet community, guys, what I challenge you guys to do is to reach out to this guy. Okay. This guy has a heart of gold. Ever since we've gotten connected, we've had we've had like 2 1 hour conversations that just like went back.
2 that we started off, it was supposed to be like 15, and then neither.
Yes, just went to like an hour. This guy has a heart of gold, has a tremendous amount of value. He leads with value. I say that to about, a lot of people, but this guy really is someone that leads with his heart and wants to just provide value and help you progress in anything that you're doing, guys. If you guys are not reading his blogs, what are you guys doing, guys? I think the biggest issue that a lot of veterans that are getting out, especially Marines, because we can connect to that, are not connected here. They're connected here. They're thinking, how do I survive? How do I survive? Versus how can I be more passion driven? Hence warrior to passion driven, guys. If we had guys more leading with their hearts, there'd be a lot more opportunity and fulfillment and more meaningful lives being, lived outside of the uniform. So brother, for that, I appreciate you for that, because you are the prime example of a Marine getting out, leading with his heart, letting go of this alpha, I got to put this exterior armor on. You know what I mean?
I can tell you how many people run into me and they're like, "You're the opposite of what I think of a Marine." I'm like, That's the first part that you have to think about. Every Marine is the big guy that flexes and looks like he's ready to bust out of a shirt. There is an entirely different field within the veteran community that didn't fit the status quo. They rocked it when they were in, but they don't fit that. And then that's exactly who I fit to serve. Those people that are different than the everyone else, that resonates with emotions. I'll admit it live on Facebook here. We watched Elf a few weeks ago with Will Ferrell, and the end of that show, where everybody's singing carols and Santa Claus goes, I was bawling like a 2-year-old, like just bawling my eyes out. Even on Extreme Makeover, I remember sitting in Okinawa in my barracks room watching Extreme Makeover, and at the end, me crying. That's me, and that's an emotional person. But that person was in the Marine Corps, and there's people like that all over. And I'm not afraid to admit that I'm a person that cries for Elf at the end or Extreme Makeover. And that's why you owning that is what I just owned it on Facebook Live to hear. That's exactly who you need to be, and I'm not afraid to own it. And when you know who you are and you own who you are, that's when the most power comes to you as well. You're no longer pretending, and you identify exactly who you are.
Absolutely, that's what separates you different. Honesty, transparency makes you polarizing. In business, that allows you to be separated from all your difference. You got a little one in the background, don't you? Cool. So, brother, where can people come and find you?
Right now, I'm on benkilloy.com.
Nice, guys. So I definitely charge you guys, for any of you guys that want to get connected more to Ben here, go to that blog. Guys, he's a tremendous leader in the space, an influencer in the space. It's really driving to build heart-driven military veterans to thrive in life and in business, guys. This guy is the real deal. He lives it day by day. As you can see, he spent a season of his life digging into himself, mastering leadership principles, guys. And if you guys are looking on how do you guys, transcribe or, repackage and repurpose all these skill sets and leadership skills that you've learned in the military out in the business and life world, this is the guy to go to, guys. Reach out to him. He's a really good guy.
Well, there you guys have it. There's episode number 13 with Ben Killoy, guys. So as always, I'm going to dive in, talk about the biggest golden grenade that I got from this episode. And then obviously I want you guys to be sharing it inside the Veteran Empowerment Transition Tribe, what your biggest takeaway was. But guys, really it was when he started explaining how that seminar pivoted his life, going from lost pup to being a lion, roaring with passion and following his heart, guys. And I can really resonate to that. Back in 2000, I think it was 14, at the end of that year, I attended a Success Resources seminar called Life Directions, where the trainer got up and he shared, you'll know you're in the flow of life, like the current of life. Like, think about it like this, guys. When you're flowing down a river, there's a cross current and then there's going with the current, right? You'll know when you're going with the current of life, when you're aligned with your natural skill sets, talents, and passions that you were designed to be following. And it is these seminars that we go to that spark those ideas, and just like, holy cow, those blind spots, you get access immediately to those. And right there, when that trainer got up there and he said that, I was like, holy cow, I've been trying to get rich from the minute I got out of the uniform. And I realized that getting rich actually had me consistently pushing away, around discovering what it was that I was here to do. So guys, what I encourage you to do is go and do the work. Invest in the money and into your mind, into your heart, and uncovering what it is that you're here to do. Guys, when you do that, you're going to become known for something, because you're going to know who you are. When you know yourself, and, I think there's a quote, "Thou know thyself," will be true or whatever. There's a philosopher that has that kind of a quote, guys. It really is. Once you know yourself, you know who you authentically are down to your core, you can go and create things, and you will go through the flow of life, the current of that river versus against it, guys. And if you guys are curious, back when that trainer announced going with the current versus against it, that was the seed that was planted in my heart for this movement. And as you guys can see, this movement in just 12 months business has blown up because I'm following my heart, like Ben Killoy said in the episode, and I'm following my natural skill sets. So guys, that was my biggest golden grenade that I got from this, guys. Go ahead and go and implement that one golden grenade that you just got from this episode, guys. Definitely share this episode with any ambitious vet or non-veteran, and in this case, and share with them. Anybody that's maybe struggling with them uncovering their purpose or their passions in life, share this episode with them, guys. Now, also, you guys rating and reviewing the episode is the lifeblood for this show, guys. You guys rating and reviewing is what has us reach more veterans, and it has us understanding that we're providing consistent, real value to you guys. And it just like as you guys grow that into your influential lives, you want to know that you're providing value, because if you're not going to make money and you're not going to feel fulfilled. So guys, let us know that we are providing consistent value to you guys. Also, if you guys have any feedback, negative or positive, make sure you guys email me directly at choffman, that's 2 F's, 2 N's, at vettrainingcoaching.com. That's actually C Hoffman, 2 F's, 2 N's, at vettrainingcoaching.com. Let me know what you guys have to say. If you have any feedback, negative or positive, guys, this show is for you guys. Last thing, guys, we know we're warrior made, right? But to become passion driven, go out there and execute on the knowledge you just gained. Guys, let's go.